Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's jump straight in, because today we are unpacking one of the most incredible and honestly most inspiring true survival stories in modern history. You know, we hear so much about the overwhelming environmental challenges facing our planet right now. But what if I told you that we've actually stared down a completely apocalyptic, world-ending environmental threat before, and we absolutely crushed it?
Seriously, how did humanity solve a world-ending crisis in just 11 years? Let that sink in. 11 years, from the moment the scientific data undeniably confirmed the threat to the signing of a comprehensive global treaty, barely over a decade. To understand how we pulled off this unprecedented victory, we've got to rewind to the very beginning.
Section 1. Discovering the invisible shield.
So for the longest time, the ozone layer was just this quirky, kind of irrelevant chemical mystery. Back in 1839, a chemist noticed this weird smell lingering in the air after lightning strikes. He figured out the chemical responsible and named it ozone, which comes straight from the Greek word ozine, meaning literally to smell. By 1867, scientists had nailed down its structure. It's just a naturally occurring molecule made of 3 oxygen atoms, floating way up in the atmosphere. And honestly, it was just a trivial footnote in chemistry textbooks. It seemed to have absolutely zero practical value to us down here on the ground.
But then, 1913 rolls around, and everything changes. 2 physicists were measuring the invisible light given off by the sun, and they noticed something odd. Almost no UVB light was actually reaching the Earth's surface. Why? Well, they realized this useless ozone gas was actually acting like a massive invisible sponge, just soaking up and blocking that specific type of light. And that realization was a total game changer. Scientists ended up spending the next 30 years, from 1928 all the way to 1958, painstakingly building a global monitoring system just to track this atmospheric shield.
Section 2. The Unseen CFC Threat. Okay, so we know the ozone layer blocks UVB light, but why exactly is UVB radiation so uniquely dangerous? Like, why did scientists suddenly care so deeply about monitoring it? Well, this is where the stakes get incredibly high. We have to ask, what would actually happen if our invisible shield just vanished?
The short answer, if the ozone layer disappeared, pretty much every living thing on the surface of the Earth would die. UVB radiation causes severe cancer. And it wouldn't just be us humans. Our pets, our livestock, our food crops, all gone. The entire global supply chain would completely collapse as famine swept the planet. Without that invisible shield, our lush, green world would literally turn barren. To use the exact bone-chilling words from our source material, imagine Mars, but with an ocean. Yeah, that is what the surface of the Earth would look like.
And then enter the villain of our story. By the 1970s, specifically around 1976, scientists started looking closely at a relatively new class of chemicals called CFCs, or chlorofluorocarbons. Now, at the time, these were hailed as wonder chemicals. They were super durable, completely non-toxic to humans, and they didn't really react with other stuff. Because they were so safe, they became massive business. We're talking usage in everything from everyday hairspray and refrigerators to critical asthma medicine. But there was a terrifying plot twist. In the lab, scientists discovered that CFCs aggressively, violently destroy ozone.
Now, obviously, governments started trying to ban CFCs just to be safe. But remember, CFCs were huge money, and corporate lobbyists fought back hard. They actually funded fraudulent science to claim these chemicals were totally harmless. One corporate chairman literally brushed off the entire concept of ozone depletion, calling it, quote, a science fiction tale, a load of rubbish, utter nonsense. So for years, policymakers were stuck in this incredibly slow, grinding battle against heavy corporate lobbying.
Section 3. A hole in the sky. To finally get the undeniable proof, we actually saw 2 radically different approaches happening at the exact same time. On the one hand, in 1985, you've got the British Antarctic Survey. They had just brought on a new graduate named John Shanklin. His job? To sit there and slowly, painstakingly process 30 years of raw, handwritten numbers on sheets of paper just to compile Antarctica's ozone levels. Meanwhile, on the other hand, you have NASA using highly advanced satellites to visually map the entire atmosphere directly from space.
Well, when John Shanklin finally finished compiling all that handwritten data, the results were absolutely shocking. The numbers showed that ozone levels over the Antarctic were relatively steady until about 1981. But after that, they started plunging by 10 to 20% every single year, bottoming out during the Antarctic spring. Literally half of all the ozone over the southern continent was just gone.
A massive hole had opened up. By August of that very same year, NASA satellites confirmed that exact same terrifying drop. But NASA had something the British team didn't: visuals. They were able to show the public an actual picture of a massive, menacing blue spot over the Earth where the ozone was just obliterated, a hole roughly the size of Russia. As our source beautifully points out, if anyone ever tries to tell you that space exploration is a waste of effort, just tell them it literally saved their lives.
Section 4. Framing the environmental crisis.
Here's the thing though, raw data alone doesn't change the world. It's how you communicate that data that actually moves the needle. And there is such a fascinating contrast here when it comes to environmental marketing. Think about how we usually talk about modern global warming, right? We say things like, the Earth will get a few degrees warmer, or we'll see more natural disasters. For the average person, that can feel kind of vague, maybe a bit distant. But the marketing for the ozone crisis, absolute masterclass. Scientists and politicians ditched the confusing jargon. They called the ozone layer a shield. They explicitly called UVB light deadly UV radiation, which instantly triggers thoughts of cancer. And they framed the depletion as a literal hole in our shield. The logic was bulletproof for everyday people. If we lose our shield, deadly radiation gets in and we die. We have a hole, we need to fix the hole. It was urgent, crystal clear, and universally understood.
Section 5. The ultimate global solution.
But here is the really crucial part. You can't just ban a globally ubiquitous chemical overnight without totally crashing the world economy. Millions of jobs and daily lives depended on these things. So the solution they came up with, the Montreal Protocol, was a total masterstroke of pragmatism. First, they gave companies grace periods and government funding to actually research alternatives to CFCs. Second, they were realistic. They allowed critical medical exceptions for things like asthma inhalers that still absolutely needed CFCs to work at the time. Third, they agreed to financially help developing nations skip the CFC phase entirely, making sure they didn't just inherit the dirty manufacturing habits the developed world was trying to leave behind. And fourth, acknowledging that the science wasn't perfect yet, they built in mandatory periodic meetings to continually update the treaty.
197. That is the number of countries where CFCs are completely illegal today. The Montreal Protocol was adopted universally. From Syria to Sweden, South Sudan to San Marino, China to the Holy See, everyone signed on. And the aftermath of this global teamwork? Honestly, it's nothing short of miraculous. The data clearly shows that our ozone layer is finally recovering. In fact, that massive hole over Antarctica is projected to be entirely history within many of our lifetimes, sometime around the year 2060. Because of the rapid, decisive actions taken a little over 30 years ago, projections show that hundreds of millions of people were saved from suffering from skin cancer. We literally saved the world. So, as this explainer makes incredibly clear today, if anyone ever tells you that international cooperation is just a naive waste of effort, you just tell them the story of the ozone layer. It was the absolute first time humanity as a whole banded together to completely neutralize a shared existential threat. We proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that we are entirely capable of recognizing a crisis, communicating it clearly, putting aside our borders, and saving our own planet. Which leaves us with one final, super important thought to chew on. If we could rally the entire planet in just 11 years to save our invisible shield, what other impossible global crises could be solved today, right now, if we just learned to communicate the threat and the solution just as clearly? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it changes how you view our capacity to fix the future.